Why did Odysseus go to war? The real reason explained. Warning: this video contains spoilers from Greek mythology, the Iliad, and the Odyssey. It also discusses the events that started the Trojan War. Now, let's begin. When most people think of Odysseus, they imagine the clever king who defeated the Cyclops, outwitted monsters, and spent 10 years trying to return home. But before any of those adventures happened, Odysseus made a decision that changed his life forever. He went to war. For 10 long years, he fought alongside the greatest heroes of Greece: Achilles, Ajax, Diomedes, Agamemnon, Menelaus. Together, they launched the largest military expedition in Greek mythology. But here's the surprising part: Odysseus didn't actually want to go. Unlike Achilles, who dreamed of eternal glory, Odysseus valued something very different. He valued his family, his wife, Penelope, his newborn son, Telemachus, and his peaceful kingdom of Ithaca. In fact, ancient myths tell us that Odysseus did everything he could to avoid joining the Trojan War. So why did he go? Was he forced? Did he have a choice? And why was one promise, made years earlier, impossible to break? The answer begins long before the Trojan War itself. It begins with the most beautiful woman in the world, Helen of Sparta. Let's explain. The woman everyone wanted. Long before Troy was destroyed, Helen was famous throughout Greece. Ancient writers described her as the most beautiful woman in the world. Kings and princes traveled from every corner of Greece hoping to marry her. Each believed he was worthy. Each brought expensive gifts. Each expected to become her husband. But Helen's father faced a serious problem. If he chose one man over all the others, the rejected princes might declare war against each other. Instead of celebrating a marriage, Greece could descend into chaos. No one knew how to solve the problem, until Odysseus offered a brilliant solution. Odysseus's clever oath. Odysseus wasn't the richest prince. He wasn't the strongest. In fact, he wasn't even competing seriously for Helen's hand. Instead, he wanted to marry Helen's cousin, Penelope. Seeing an opportunity, Odysseus proposed an agreement that would change history. Every man seeking Helen's hand would swear a sacred oath. Whoever Helen chose, everyone else would accept her decision. More importantly, every prince promised something else. If anyone ever tried to steal Helen or threaten her marriage, they would all unite to protect her husband. It seemed like the perfect solution. The kings agreed. The oath was sworn before the gods. Helen eventually chose Menelaus. Odysseus married Penelope. Everyone believed the matter was settled. No one realized that this promise would one day pull all of Greece into war. The judgment of Paris. Years later, the gods themselves became involved. At the famous wedding of Peleus and Thetis, the goddess Eris, who had not been invited, threw a golden apple into the celebration. Written on it were the words, "For the fairest." 3 powerful goddesses immediately claimed it: Hera, Athena, and Aphrodite. Unable to settle the dispute themselves, the gods chose a Trojan prince named Paris to decide. Each goddess offered him a reward. Hera promised power. Athena promised wisdom and victory in battle. Aphrodite promised the love of the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris chose Aphrodite. That decision changed history forever. Helen was taken to Troy. Keeping her promise, Aphrodite helped Paris win Helen. In most versions of the myth, Paris traveled to Sparta, while Menelaus was away. Helen eventually left with Paris for Troy. Whether she went willingly or was taken against her will depends on the ancient source. But one fact remained the same. When Menelaus returned, his wife was gone. For him, it wasn't simply a personal tragedy. It was a direct violation of the sacred oath every Greek king had sworn years earlier. Odysseus didn't want to go. When Agamemnon called upon the Greek kings to honor their promise, Odysseus had already built the life he wanted. He ruled the peaceful island of Ithaca. He had married Penelope. Their son, Telemachus, had just been born. Leaving meant abandoning everything he loved. Ancient myths even say that Odysseus knew something terrible. A prophecy warned that if he joined the war, he would not return home for 20 years. Knowing this, Odysseus tried to avoid the expedition. He pretended to have gone mad. According to the legend, He yoked a horse and an ox together, then began plowing his fields while scattering salt instead of seed. It was a bizarre sight. The other Greek leaders weren't convinced. They believed he was pretending. So Palamedes devised a test. He placed the infant Telemachus directly in front of the plow. At the last moment, Odysseus turned aside to avoid harming his son. His secret was exposed. He wasn't insane. He simply didn't want to leave his family. A promise could not be broken. Once the deception failed, Odysseus had no choice. The oath he had helped create years earlier was sacred. Breaking it would dishonor both himself and the gods. As one of Greece's greatest kings, he was expected to keep his word. Reluctantly, he gathered his men and sailed for Troy. What he believed would be a short campaign turned into one of history's longest wars. The Trojan War lasted 10 years. Thousands of warriors lost their lives. Some of Greece's greatest heroes never returned home. The hero who ended the war. Ironically, the man who never wanted the war became the one who finally ended it. After years of fighting, the Greeks still couldn't capture Troy. Its massive walls remained impossible to breach. Then Odysseus devised one final plan. Instead of attacking the city, the Greeks built an enormous wooden horse. Hidden inside were some of Greece's finest warriors. The Trojans believed the horse was a gift. They pulled it inside their city. That night, the hidden soldiers emerged. They opened the gates. The Greek army entered Troy. The city fell. The Trojan War was finally over. The famous Trojan horse became one of the greatest military strategies in history. But the war was only the beginning. Most heroes celebrated the victory. Odysseus believed he could finally return to Penelope and Telemachus. Instead, his greatest journey was about to begin. Because during the war, many Greeks had angered the gods. Odysseus himself later blinded the Cyclops Polyphemus, the son of Poseidon. The sea gods swore revenge. Storms scattered the Greek fleet. Ships were destroyed. Friends were lost. Monsters blocked every path home. What should have been a short voyage lasted another 10 years. In many ways, the real story of Odysseus didn't begin at Troy. It began after the war ended. Why Odysseus is different from other Greek heroes. One reason Odysseus remains so popular today is because his motivation feels deeply human. Achilles sought immortal glory. Agamemnon sought victory. Ajax sought honor. Odysseus wanted something much simpler. He wanted to go home. Everything he did during the war, and every challenge he faced afterward, was driven by one goal: returning to his wife, watching his son grow up, seeing Ithaca again. That longing for home is what makes the Odyssey timeless. It's not just an adventure story. It's the story of a man trying to reclaim the life he never wanted to leave. So, why did Odysseus go to war? Not because he craved fame, not because he dreamed of conquest, and not because he wanted to fight. He went because years earlier he had sworn a sacred oath to defend Helen's marriage if it was ever threatened. When Paris took Helen to Troy, that promise became impossible to ignore. Although Odysseus tried to avoid the war, his loyalty, his honor, and the expectations of the Greek kings eventually compelled him to join the expedition. Ironically, the man who wanted peace became the hero whose intelligence brought the Trojan War to an end. And yet, the greatest challenge of his life wasn't winning the war. It was finding his way back home. What do you think? If you had known that going to Troy meant losing 20 years with your family, would you have honored the oath like Odysseus, or would you have stayed in Ithaca? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe,